Hello everyone. I know I haven't posted in a while, but I thought I'd upload a video because I found a very interesting format of Yu-Gi-Oh that I think that you guys will enjoy. So this is called Trinity Format. So what is Trinity Format? So Trinity Format is a format that's designed in part to be a slower paced and more varied game in terms of meta. So rather than having a top two decks in a format, you'll have 3 or 4 or 5 different decks. And the ban list gets updated monthly, so these decks change quite frequently. The hits are very fair. So if a deck tops because of some overpowered combo or card, they usually get hit. But yeah, the way that the game mode's designed is it's a Highlander format game mode, so you can only run one copy of any given card in your deck, with a couple of stipulations which I'll get into in a couple of minutes. But for the most part, you can only run one copy of each card you want to run in your deck. The second change is that the deck minimum is now 30 cards, and you might wonder, why would I want to go over 30 cards? And you're seeing my deck here with 40. I'll go into that as well. But having the deck minimum of 30 cards makes it's kind of like a trade-off between consistency or seeing cards you want to see more often, which again I will talk about in a couple of minutes. So Highlander and its 30 card limit minimum, on a deck. Now the third rule change is a summon limit, so you can only summon 3 times per turn, and that restriction only applies to effect monsters and only applies to normal summons and special summons. So if you have normal monsters and you can summon them, it doesn't cost you one of your summons towards the limit. And if you have a flip summonable monster, that also doesn't count towards the limit. And if you have a non-effect monster, say like Gaia Saber, the Force of Earth, that Link monster with no effect, that doesn't count either. So it's only effect monsters that count towards the limit. And the final change is a different ban list. So, like I said earlier, the ban list gets updated practically every month after each tournament, which is also held monthly, hitting the top decks or some overpowered power creepy cards, and allowing a much more varied and fair meta game where any deck can really compete. Now, the ban list doesn't really work like it does for the usual format. So the way the ban list works this time is you have your regular forbidden cards, which you can't use any of in a deck ever, and then you have what's called a semi-forbidden card and a co-forbidden card. So what are these? So a semi-forbidden card, you cannot run any semi-forbidden cards in your deck unless you meet the following requirement, which is going 5 cards over the deck minimum per extra semi-forbidden card you add to your deck, and you can only have a maximum of 1 semi-forbidden card in your deck. So, for example, Pot of Greed is a semi-forbidden card. So if I wanted to add Pot of Greed to this deck, and I had 30 cards in my deck, to add Pot of Greed I would have to go up to 35 cards. And then if I wanted to add Graceful Charity, which is also semi-limited, I would have to add another 5 cards and go up to 40 cards to add Graceful Charity to my deck. And what this does is it allows you to deck build with some real strategy, because it lets you choose whether you are going to have a much more consistent 30 card deck, or whether you want to run some powerful cards and have the 5 extra cards in your deck, which stops you from drawing it so often. Now there's also co-forbidden cards. Co-forbidden cards you can run none of in a deck unless, again, you have 5 extra over the 30 card minimum limit per 2 co-cards you put in your deck, and you have to put 2 in. So for example, in this deck here that you're seeing in front of you, both Duelist Alliance and Wavering Eyes are co-forbidden, and so what that meant is I had to add 5 extra cards to my deck, and in exchange I could include both of these in those 5 cards. So another example of a semi-forbidden card is Heavy Metal Foe's Electromite, which is why I'm adding another 5 cards to my 40 card deck. Now the fourth type of card, on the list is called Unbound. And what an Unbound card is you can run 3 of those cards in your deck with no restriction at all. And those cards are as follows. You can run any normal monster at 3 in your deck. No restriction at all on them. Except Pendulum normal monsters, if I'm not mistaken. The second type of card you can run 3 of is a card that lists itself in its card name. So for example, you could run 3 Destiny Hero Militias in your deck and you wouldn't have any drawbacks for that. Another type of card that can be run at 3 is a card that has the same name as another card while it's in the deck. So for example, both Polymerization and Fusion Substitute are treated as Polymerization while they're in the deck, and therefore you are allowed to run 3 of Polymerization or 3 Fusion Substitute, or a combination of the 2, so that you can have up to 3 in your deck. Same thing for things like Harpy Ladies. All the different Harpy Ladies you can run 3 of. And what this allows is basically it's for decks. It's so the cards don't become redundant, basically. So Militias would be useless if you couldn't run 3 of it, and it just stops that essentially. So that's how the format works. There is one extra rule, and that is if I want to run 2 of a card. So for example, if I wanted 2 Ragnaroks or 2 Liliths, for example, what I'd have to do again, add 5 cards over the limit, and I can add an extra copy of a card. So just to recap, Highlander format, you can only run 1 of each card, except for if you add 5 extra cards, in which case you can add a duplicate of another card. You can only have a maximum of 3 cards in your deck, and any card on the ban list, so long as you run 5 extra cards, you can add into your deck, so long as it's not on the forbidden side of the ban list. So let's take a look at an example deck list. This is my attempt at DDD in this format. Now, you've probably seen some DDD videos on my channel before, and what DDD excel at is special summoning and spamming Crystal Wing and Siegfried onto the field. Now, this isn't the case for this format. This format's a lot slower. I can't summon as often because there's only 3 summons per turn, and all of my monsters are effect monsters. And I can only run 1 of each card, which means getting to combo pieces like Swirl Slime, Necro Slime, Lamia is a lot harder. So I've redesigned the deck and repurposed it. I've gone for a more pendulum-focused deck. And so this deck focuses on trying to either get out a turn 1 Caesar or a turn 1 Electromite. Now, the reason we go for Caesar first is to so when it dies, you can grab a contract. You could link with it on the following turn to grab a contract into this new Apprentice Witch that's coming out soon. I'm just testing this card. You're not allowed to run OCG cards in this format, but I'm just testing this out. You could replace this with something like the new Link Archfiend monster that came out that needs 2 Fiends. That works just as fine. And the reason we go for Electromite is to set up our extra deck, grab Thomas or Kepler or Newton into our hands and start some plays going, and basically set up for a following turn OTK. So this deck is a little slower than the one in the TCG, but after your first turn's set up, you can make some quite powerful plays using cards like Ragnarok or Kaiser. Kaiser is really, really good in this format because the moment you pendulum summon it, you can pop your Scales, which triggers Electromite's draw, and it lets you OTK because you can attack 3 times with this massive beta. Now, another reason I'm running a pendulum engine is because pendulum summoning counts as 1 summon towards the summon limit, no matter how many monsters you're pendulum summoning. So it allows us to spam the field a bit more liberally with our DD monsters. So, for example, in the example duel I'm about to show you once we've finished the deck profile, is I will be pendulum summoning 3 big DDD monsters and winning the game with it. And under regular rules, I would only be able to summon 3 times per turn. But in that turn, I think I summoned 4 or 5 times because of the pendulum summoning. So for this deck, there are extra cards that aren't DDD because obviously there aren't enough good DDD cards to run it in a single deck. So what I'm running is Abyss Actor Curtain Raiser. So Abyss Actor Curtain Raiser is a free special summon from the scale when you don't control a card. It's a great first turn card. It acts as a 2200 beta if it's the only card on your field. And it's also a free Fiend level 4 to make Caesar or a Pendulum monster to make Electromite. So that's why we're running an Abyss Actor Curtain Raiser. We have Archfiend Eccentric, which is a searchable via Electromite MST. Now, back row here is really good in this metagame, just because lots of people, because the format's slower, will run more traps and more back row. And what Archfiend Eccentric does do is pop it. It also lets us pop problem monsters, which is always good. And because you pop it in the scale to pop a card on the field, well, a spell trap on the field, sorry, you get the draw for Electromite as well, which is another good synergy in the deck. We run 1 Kerberos. So the reason we're on Kerberos, it's a level 4 Fiend type Pendulum monster, which is all the requirements we need to make Caesar or Electromite on the first turn. And it has a pretty nice pendulum effect for the slower format, where I can turn any DD monster on my field to level 4, which is quite good when you want to summon things like Chambara, or when I want to make a Lamia a level 4 so I can summon into Siegfried, or overlay into Caesar, for example. So it has some utility there as well, and also because this deck is not so focused on getting gate into your hand, it's more focused on milling. So you can spam Copernicus onto the field and start dumping Swamp or Gates into the graveyard and grab them back with Kerberos or Newton. And so that's another reason we're running with. If you Pendulum Summon him, you can grab these guys back. Then we run the one Lamia. You can only run one. I don't really want to run extra cards to make myself less consistent to run more. It allows us synchro access. As you can see, we're not running Crystal Wing anymore, simply because it takes up way too many summons and way too many resources to make in this format. And so I'm running a lot easier cards to summon. So for example, I'm still running Siegfried because you can synchro Lamia with Newton or a Kaiser or any other level 7 that's in the deck like Apocalypse or Leonidas to make it. I'm running Chambara because I have a lot of level 4s, and this is a very good card for OTKs. I have the Moonlight Rose Dragon, which is mainly because I'm using Destrudo. It is an out to Beals, which is very strong synchro monster in this meta. We have Ignista, which allows you to shuffle a card back. It's very powerful in this deck because we have a lot of pendulum monsters. And then we have one Scarlight just to clear out special summons. It's kind of a situational card in there. I could probably remove this and replace it with something else if I found something better. But yeah, that's all the access that Lamia gives us. Typically, I don't really see myself using Lamia all that often, really. It's kind of like a card that comes up every so often, and I'm like, hey, I can use this. So it's not exactly an integral combo piece anymore. I could probably remove it and replace it with something different if there were other DD cards that were better. But yeah, next card, DD Lilith. In a slower format, this is really good. It lets me get back any DD that's been popped into the graveyard or any DD that's been left in the extra deck. And seeing as this is a Pendulum DD deck, getting cards back from the extra deck like Kepler, Newton, Copernicus, Ragnarok, all those kind of things, if they get stuck in the pendulums in the extra deck, I can grab them back into my hand and special summon them or pendulum scale them. That's really good by me. Especially with cards like Newton, you can recycle Newton again and discard it to grab back one of your contracts or the human resources in your graveyard, which is my favourite loop, and I'm glad I can play it again. Then we have Necro Slime. Obviously, if you can dump it, you can make something like Beowulf, which is always nice, or a Dark to heal up. You'll notice we're not running Genghis, mainly because you can't summon enough to make use of Genghis. Usually if you've summoned Genghis, you don't have any summons left, or there's nothing in your graveyard yet, and he just seemed a bit more situational, and I didn't like to run him. He didn't seem very necessary. DD Orthros. Again, back row removal is very powerful in a format where people like to run lots of back row. Orthros is one of those. He pops a DD or contract on your field, pops a back row, always good. He's also searchable via both Electromite and Gates. So all around a very decent card. He's also a level 4 tuner, which lets us go into things like Curse King Siegfried or Caesar. And he's a pendulum monster. Unfortunately, if you special summon him, you can't go into Electromite, but if you normal summon him, you can. So he's still good in that aspect. He can also summon himself from the hand on the opponent's turn if you take damage, which is always nice as well. Next up, we have Copernicus. He is our Armageddon Knight. He will mill us things like human resources, contracts, DD monsters that we want dumped into the graveyard, like Apocalypse. And then we can recycle those with Newton and dump Necro Slimes to make fusion monsters, or dump Lamias to synchro summon. So he's all around a very good card. There's also the requirement of being a level 4 Fiend Pendulum monster, which is always good to open with on your first turn in this deck. And then we have Kepler. Again, I don't need to explain this. This is the Stratus of the deck. He searches out any contract. So if he searches out Gate, you can search out any DD in the deck. If you search out Swamp, you can fuse into things. And in this game, we like to run Witch because it's a lot slower. We can use this as like a control card. I'll get into that in a bit later. We have Newton. Discard it to the graveyard, grab anything back. It's also a high scale, which is very useful for pendulum summoning high level monsters. So you can get things back like your human resources that you dumped off of Copernicus and loop it multiple times. So the way that works is you dump human resources, discard Newton, grab back human resources, set it, activate human resources during your opponent's turn, shuffle a whole bunch of things back, including Newton, and then add Newton and another card to your hand, and you can just continually loop human resources and Newton like that by just discarding Newton, getting it back every turn. It's always a +1. It's basically a second gate once you got it set up. It's mainly for the grind game. You don't really use it if it's going to be a quick OTK game. But one of the things I love about this deck is you can go from a very quick tempoed OTK game to a very control-based game in a matter of a heartbeat. Like one turn you can go for the OTK, the next turn you can be sitting behind Witch and start popping your opponent's field, which is really nice. We have one Thomas. I have said in the past I don't like Thomas very much, but in this format, which is a lot slower and pendulum focused, DD Savant Thomas can grab you back things like Kepler that fall into your extra deck. It can grab you back Newtons that you've popped in your scale and you've just destroyed with something like Electromite. And he's also a very good rank 8 card, so you can go to something like Kali Yuga, which is always nice. You want to see Thomas in your opening hand just so that you can have the recyclability, but if you don't, there's no need to panic because you can get it out with Electromite. Then we run one Swirl Slime. Fusion Fodder also lets you summon things like Ragnarok from your hand. All around good card, no need to explain that. We have Apocalypse. It allows you to pop your Pendulum Scales in your opponent's turn, which triggers Electromite's draw, which is always nice. And you can also pop dead cards on your field, like a Face Up Dragon's Ravine, for example, or pop up a couple of contracts to avoid the burn on the next turn. It also is a free 2700 beta, and you can keep recurring it by pendulum summoning it, which is always nice. It's level 7, which is great to make things like Big Eye, and is also good for synchro summoning. We have a Ragnarok. Ragnarok lets you special summon any DD from the graveyard by special summoning itself. You can also scale it to do the same thing. And then we also have Leonidas. I'm not usually a big fan of this card, but the reason that I'm running it in this deck is again, it's a level 7 pendulum beta. It's easily summonable when you have a contract out because you take the burn damage. So again, another good card. Kaiser, never ever ran it before, but it's an OTK card again. It attacks 3 times, level 7. It goes to the graveyard, which is something rare in this deck because of the pendulum scales. And because it can go to the graveyard, you can use things like Ragnarok to bring it back after you've dumped it with Copernicus. You can Necro Slime with it to make a Beowulf. But usually what we use it for is we get it to our hand using something like Lilith or Newton, and then we pendulum summon into it and OTK. We have the one of Destrudo. You dump it with Dragon Ravine or Dragon Shrine, and you get a free level 7 to bounce things back to people's hands with. That's always nice. Then we have a Mythical Beast Engine. So Garuda is basically another eccentric Archfiend. It pops back row. It's searchable with Kerberos, which is nice. We have Jackal King, which special summons Kerberos from the extra deck once you scale it. And we have Kerberos, which searches out both of them. And what this does is it allows you to make Electromite in your first turn much more consistently. It also lets you set up this guy as a beta. So this guy, whenever you activate a spell card, which is any contract or any of your scales, you put spell counters on yourself. Why has it done this? You put spell counters on it, and it has the ability to, I believe, negate monster effects and destroy the card by removing 2 spell counters from it. Which is always nice. Once this loads back up. Next we have Purple Poison Magician. You can pop it with Electromite or crash it on the field to destroy a card. It's always nice. Dark Worm and Gate Zero. Again, staple pendulum cards for a pendulum deck. You can dump them with Dragon Ravine and Dragon Shrine, and it's just a recurable level 4 pendulum monster you can use to make Electromites and rank 4s. We have Allure of Darkness for draw power. We have Dark Contract with the Gate, self-explanatory, it searches. Dark Contract with the Swamp King lets you fuse. It also lets you have access to Wave King, Oblivion, Caesar, Ragnarok. which lets you get rid of some untargetable problem monsters, which is always nice. We have Dragon Ravine, which lets you dump both Darkworm or Destrudo, depending on the situation, and same for Dragon Shrine. We have Duelist Alliance, which lets us search out any Pendulum trap card, and I like to use Pendulum Switch, just because it lets you special summon spam Ragnaroks from your scale and put them back. You can do things like scale a high level DD monster that you would otherwise not be able to summon and then special summon it to your field, which is always nice. You can use it to avoid effects like Raigeki or targeting spells by putting things back into your scale. So it's a nice card. I'm just testing it out. I don't know whether I'll keep it or not. But the main reason I'm using this, and it didn't save because I just updated it, is so I can run Wavering Eyes. So when you run a co-forbidden card, you have to run a second co-forbidden card. So I was thinking of running Duelist Alliance alongside Wavering Eyes. I might replace this with something else later. Now, I can't remember what I took out for this. It was probably something like... to be honest, it was probably Armageddon Knight. He didn't really do anything, so let's get rid of him. So yeah, Duelist Alliance searches out Pendulum Switch. Wavering Eyes, self-explanatory. It searches for Kepler by scaling 2 things, or searches for Newton, or any other DD card you might need. It's always good to have. Let me just save this before it kicks me out again. Okay, so next on the list we have Foolish Burial. Lets you dump any DD from your deck. It also lets you dump Darkworm and Destrudo, which is also another good card. 1-for-1 against Kepler or Lamia. Getting to Kepler on your first turn is really good because you can search out Witch and then go into Electromite and cycle it back to your hand, so you can search Gate on your next turn. So that's good. And then Upstart Goblin for consistency. So with Allure and Upstart, you're kind of running 37 cards, so it's kind of nice to have the consistency there. Breakthrough Skill. So because this is a slower format, negating effects with trap cards is viable. Breakthrough Skill is one of the best effect negation traps in the game, alongside the other one, Lost Wind, that I'm running. They both negate monster effects, which is great. They're an out to Electromite, which is great. And this one halves monsters' attacks on the field, so if anyone ever does get out a beater that's bigger than one of my DDs, I can halve their attack, which is always nice. And this one's recurable too. Then we have DD Human Resources. Again, like I said, the Newton resource loop allows us to go +1 every single turn on a grind game. We have Dark Contract with the Witch. It lets you discard any DD in your hand to pop a card on the field, and all your Fiend-type monsters gain 1,000 attack during your opponent's turn. Now, normally I wouldn't run this card, but it's extremely good for the control game because you can have a DD recycled into your hand via something like Electromite or Gate, and you can use this to control the tempo of your opponent's play because they can only summon 3 times. Popping a key card on the opponent's field after one of their summons can cripple some decks, and I love that as a control aspect. And when you have it set alongside something like Breakthrough Skill, or you set up a Siegfried as well behind it, like it's just all around a great card when you have that set up. We've already talked about these two, so we'll move on to the strikes and warning. So I run Solemn Strike and Solemn Warning as generic outs to problem cards that people will be summoning to try and out my DDD fields or kill my Electromite. It also removes one of my opponent's summons for the turn, which is always good. And then for the extra deck, we have a Beowulf, pop all spell and traps on the field for spell and trap heavy decks, piercing damage for your DD monsters so you can OTK, all around great card. Dark heals life points when you have a Dark Contract on the field and it's burning you. So if you get too low, you can summon Dark out and gain the life points back. It's also an easy 2800 beater, which is another great card. We have Kaiser Ragnarok, which is, like I said, gets rid of problem monsters. We have Starving Venom. This is a tech choice so that we can copy things like Heavy Metal Foe's Electromite in the graveyard and use its effect again, or we can target Abyss Ragnarok to banish cards on the field. Other targets, you could definitely target Central Archfiend if it ever hits the graveyard to pop a problem monster on the field. I wouldn't recommend it, but it's possible. It's there if you need it. You could also use Thomas's effect to pop a Pendulum Scale and summon a level 8 DD from the deck. So yeah, all around, it's a great tech choice just to recycle abilities. We have the Moonlight Rose Dragon as an out to stuff like Beals using Destrudo. We have Siegfried, which is obvious. It's a free Red Dragon Archfiend Abyss. Chambara for OTKs, Ignista to remove problem cards, Scarlet Archfiend to destroy all my opponent's special summon monsters, Kali-Yuga to remove back row and negate effects of monsters that are troubling me, Caesar for contract searches mainly, but it's also a soul charge for the field when you set up, which is also good. Exciton Knight, which is legal in this format at 1, because as you know, it is an amazing Exceed monster. It destroys all cards on the field except itself when you detach cards, so long as your opponent has more cards on their field and hand than you. So it's very good when you're on the back foot. Big Eye, if I summon 2 level 7 DDs, I might want to take an opponent's monster. That's always nice. Apprentice Witchling, or the Archfiend Link monster that's Link 2. It's just a generic Link 2 for this deck so that we can have some spaces to Pendulum Summon to. And then Electromite, our combo starter. And then we have a side deck. If anyone wants me to go into that, they can just leave a comment below and I'll talk about my side deck later. But let's, for now, get into an example game. So, earlier this week, I played against a fellow Trinity player. He is called... he is called the Card Ripper. He challenged me to a game. I was new to the format, so I thought I'd give it a go. And I ended up winning, which was nice. I only had time for one game, so this is the game we played. So he is playing a rank 4 Utopia deck, and I'm playing my DDDs like I just showed you. And so I open absolutely horribly. So what I open a Lilith, a Necroslime, and a Leonidas, which means I have absolutely no access to Caesar, absolutely no access to Electromite. I do, however, have a Breakthrough Skill and a Foolish Burial, so I can set some things up. It's just not as good as it could be. Now, luckily my opponent goes first, which means I get an extra draw. But we'll see what the opponent does. So he will... he's running a... he and I are both running less than 40 cards in our deck for this duel. I edited my deck later. This is an earlier version of DD. And what we do for dueling, but because you can't have less than 40 cards in a deck, is you just put Exodia pieces in to fill the space. So I'll just skip us banishing all our Exodia pieces. So what he does for his first move, he activates Upside Goblin. Again, it's a good consistency card. He plays Instant Fusion. This allows him to summon any fusion monster in the deck. Now, note that this doesn't count towards the summon limit. This is a monster that is a non-effect monster, and non-effect monsters, they don't count towards the summon limit in the same way that a normal monster doesn't count towards the summon limit. So Camion Wizard doesn't count towards the summon limit, which gives him an extra summon for the turn, which is great for him. He'll then summon Harpy Lady. Again, he can run 3 of this in his deck because it's a normal monster. And because it's a normal monster, that also doesn't count towards his summon limit because it only applies to effect monsters. So these 2 monsters he's just got out for free without using a summon limit, which is going to let him overlay 3 times on top of this Utopia into a Utopic Zale, which is a card I absolutely hate the design of. You discard a rank up magic to go up into it, and which he does, and he gains 1,000 attack for every material on it. So at the moment it's on 4,000 attack, I believe. And when it has Exceed material, you can detach an Exceed material, and my cards and effects cannot be activated this turn, which is horrible for DDD because they're all about activating their effects, swarming the field, scaling pendulums, that kind of thing. So he basically shuts down my entire deck with this card. Now, lucky for me, I have a Breakthrough Skill, so next turn I can set this and stop him from murdering me with his Utopic Zale, which is always good. So my turn, I open up Kerberos, which is sad because then I could have opened up Electromite by Foolish Burialing into a Swell Slime. But unfortunately I cannot do that, so what I'm going to do is I'm probably going to set this Necro, so I can set open the graveyard. I'll set the Breakthrough Skill and pass my turn, because there wasn't much I could do. I was under the effects of Utopic Zale. As I say, it's a card I don't like, but it's very powerful, and if you can summon it in this format, props to you, so good for you, Ripper. So he's going to summon out a Phantom Knights of Silent Boots in attack mode. I don't know why he made this play. He has only 200 attack points and he attacked into my defense position monster. He could have easily taken 2,000-ish damage from my Lilith if I'd set that. Lucky for him, he only takes 100 damage due to my Necro Slime, which is unfortunate on my part. Fortunate for him. I don't know why he attacked with this Hyper monster. Maybe to get the extra 3,000 damage in on me if it was a 0 defense point monster or something. He eventually kills my Necro Slime and ends his turn. In my turn, he detaches. What I'm going to do is I'm going to break through Skillet so that I'm not under its effect, and its attack points go to 0, which means I have a chance to kill it. I have 1 for 1 now, so I'm going to discard my Kerberos and summon into Kepler, which will allow me to search any contract card. I'm going to grab Gates. I don't need to have Tempo. I can have a control game. I need aggro right now to get rid of that Utopic Zale. So I search into Copernicus, which is going to get us a dump. I normal summon the Copernicus and dump the Apocalypse. The reason I dump the Apocalypse is because I'm going to have Pendulum Scales now. And if they ever get targeted with removal effects, I can pop my Scales and revive this instead, which is always nice to avoid those tricky Twin Twisters and stuff. So I Link Summon. I go into Electromite. Again, as I said, this is a great card. It's semi-limited, which is why I have to run for 5 extra cards in my deck. This lets me search out a Thomas and put it into my extra deck. Next up, I scale Leonidas just to use Electromite's effect. I pop it to add Thomas back to my hand and draw a card. And then I go to the Dragon Shrine and dump the Dark Worm just as a setup. In case my field gets wiped, I can get back a level 4 monster at the very least on the Pendulum Scale. I scale the Thomas, which allows me to grab back Kepler. So next turn I can summon that again, or I can scale it to get over another contract or a big Pendulum summon off. And then I attack over the Utopic Zale. Because it has 0 attack points, I deal 1800 damage to him and destroy the Utopic Zale, which is really nice for me. It's very lucky that I opened up the Breakthrough skill. If I hadn't, I'd probably have lost this game. But that's all the luck of the draw, I suppose. And then so back over to him. His deck, as I said, is a very heavy Utopia rank 4 kind of spam deck from what I've seen. So he activates this rank up magic, Admiration of the Thousands. I have never seen this card before, but I really like it. It lets you target any number of XC monsters in each graveyard, all of the same rank, special summon a number or a CXC monster with one rank higher and use them as its overlay material. So he manages to summon out Utopia Ray V, which is extremely good for him because he gets to pop my Electromite and deal damage to it to be equal to its attack points. So I'm going to take 800 damage and then have some direct attacks put on me. So he heals Electromite. I get 2 direct attacks on me. Don't know why he's leaving the Silent Boots in attack. He's just trying to bait me into attacking it so he can search out his sword. But I think this is the end of the line. So what I do is I search out Kaiser using Gate. And now I have an OTK setup. I use Thomas to get back my Leonidas. I Foolish Burial my Lamia because I can. And then I scale into my Kepler, which is a scale 10. Another reason why Kepler is so good is because it opens up the scales so high. And then I'm going to Pendulum Summon 3 monsters. I'm going to bring out Ragnarok. I'm going to bring out Leonidas. I accidentally put Gate back in the deck there. And I'm going to Pendulum Summon out Kaiser. Now here, that is 1 summon towards the limit. Which is great in this deck. Now I have 3 beaters out for the price of 1. I could have activated Ragnarok's effect here and revived the Apocalypse in my graveyard, but I forgot. It's my first time playing on Dueling Book, and I've gotten used to the luxuries of Yu-Gi-Oh! Pro. So I was unable to remember to do that. In the future, I'll probably remember. I use Kaiser's effect, and I pop my scales. And what this lets me do is it allows Kaiser to attack 2 extra times this turn. So he gets 3 attacks, which means that we're gonna attack for game. So Ragnarok's gonna banish this, and he's gonna scoop, and that's the game. So that's what Trinity Format looks like. As you can see, it's a very varied format from what we usually play. I'm assuming rank 4 is a very good deck. From what I've read in the meta write-ups that Treetop Duelists made, rank 4 was one of the top decks last tournament, alongside some weathery pacifist control decks and Pendulum. In the current tournament, we're seeing some Dragon Rulers, some Tricksters, some new faces because of the I'm assuming because of the ban list hits from last tournament. As I say, I'm very new to this format. So what I have next for you guys to see I have... ooh, sorry, I have closed my Chrome by accident. Let me reopen that. So, I have a couple of duels from the recent tournament that's going on now from round 1. So we're going to gamecast over Prawn Wizard and Cyber Rain Catru. Sorry if I butchered your name, Catru. But what we're going to see is a game between two decks. One is rank 4, which is what we're seeing Prawn Wizard play, and Catru is going to be playing Skull Servant. Or a zombie Skull Servant deck. It looks like I saw from the quick replay that I looked at earlier. So what we're seeing in his hand here, Thunder King Ryo. This is a very good stun card. It prevents people from adding cards from the deck to the hand. Typically I'd side it if I was anyone else, just because not many decks search very often, because a lot of searches come off the normal summon, and you only get 3 summons per turn, so searching's not brilliant anymore, but it's still also a good out to cards that special summon once, like an Exceed monster, so it's good against rank 4, I suppose, which is always nice. We have Armageddon Knight. It lets you dump anything to the graveyard. I'm assuming he has some kind of maybe Clown Blade engine that'll let him make a rank 4. We have Jiragedo. Again, a free special summon level 4 monster, also a nice attack boost, and Curtain Raiser, which is also a free level 4 monster. We also have the Twin Twisters. Back row is important to get rid of in a deck that's combo centric like rank 4. And we have Dragon Ravine, which is going to activate now, and that'll get him Dark Worm, which is another free level 4 monster. So what we're going to see is he's going to discard Armageddon Knight to dump the Dark Worm and special summon the Dark Worm. He's going to normal summon the Rayo and overlay into Castell. I'm assuming he's just doing that because he can. If I was him, I would have probably attacked with Rayo, attacked with Dark Worm, and then overlaid in main phase 2. But he decides to overlay first and attack into the defense position monster. It ends up being Pyramid Turtle, which triggers and summons him a zombie from the deck. So he summons out a White Princess. So White Princess, when he's normal summoned, can send a White Prince from the deck to the graveyard. So he does that, and I believe White Prince lets you send 2 more Skull Servants to the graveyard, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, I think it does. Yeah, 1 Skull Servant and 1 Lady in the White go to the graveyard. So he's already set up his graveyard with a bunch of Skull Servant names, so he can power up his king if he can get it out. You can see him set down the Twin Twisters to deal with any back row and end his turn. Now, note that if he had kept out Dark Worm and Rayo, he would have been able to beat over this. And maybe get rid of some of Cantry's field presence. But he decided to overlay for Castell early. I'm not sure the mentality behind this. If you know this, maybe leave it in the comments below and I'll take a look later. But we're going to see Cantry summon out the Uni-Zombie, a great monster. Lets him have lots of synchro access. He's going to mill the Mizuki to gain a level. He's going to activate Instant Fusion. It allows him to summon a Relinquish from his deck, not Relinquished, and fires an as Restrict, sorry, and get rid of this Castell so he can have an open field to attack into. He's then going to Link Summon, Synchro Summon into Beals, which, as I've told you in my deck profile, it's quite a problem monster. It can't be destroyed by battle or by card effects, so you have to bounce it to remove it, and if you try to beat over it, he's going to gain attack points. So yeah, it's always good to have something like Moonlight Rose Dragon to get rid of it, or something like Compulsory Evacuation Device in your deck to bounce it. In Prawn Wizard's case, he's going to have the Moonlight Rose Dragon. So he's going to activate Premature Burial, bring back the Armageddon Knight, and use its effect to dump Destrudo, halve his life points to bring out the Destrudo, and then he'll special summon the Moonlight Rose and get rid of Problem Beals. And attack directly. He just removed Destrudo, goes to the bottom, and he ends his turn. So we're going to see a summon of Lila. This tells me if I was playing as Prawn Wizard, doesn't really have many plays left if he's summoning a Lila and trying to get rid of the back row instead of making a play. So perhaps Cantry was out of options here. I don't know if he had a way to summon King of the Skull Servants or anything like that. Perhaps he can use the Mizuki in his graveyard to make a rank 4 play here, which he does. He uses the Mizuki in the graveyard, summons Pyramid Turtle out, and rank 4 into Castell to bounce the Moonlight Rose and get a free 2000 poke to the face. Problem Wizard drops to 1600, and he draws into Dragon Shrine, which lets him dump the Destrudo again. He's going to use Dark Worm and bring it back, and then normal summon into the Abyss Actor Curtain Raiser, allowing him to go into a rank 4 play. He'll overlay into Utopia. If you're wondering why he doesn't go up into Utopia the Lightning, it's because he's already hit his summon limit, because he summoned Dark Worm, Abyss Actor, and Utopia this turn. That's 3, so he cannot rank up into Lightning just yet. He attacks over the Castell and ends his turn. Cantru thinks a lot and decides on summoning Mathematician and dumping the King of the Skull Servants. By dumping the King of the Skull Servants, he will be able to activate the effect of White Prince to summon out a new Skull Servant. I'm not sure why he didn't use Mizuki to summon out the Skull Servant from his graveyard. I'm not familiar with Skull Servant, so this might be the better play, I don't know. He summons out a 2000 attack point King of the Skull Servants and sets a card. We see Archphoenix Eccentric go off, pop the back row. He chains it. It's Burial from a Different Dimension. He gets to put all the Skull Servants back. So what he was doing, I guess, was setting up a sneaky trap where he had a 2000 attack point Skull Servant and trying to get Prawn Wizard to attack into it so that he could have the 5000 attack point Skull Servant beat over the Utopia or match the Utopia Lightning. So what he's going to do, upgrading to Utopia Lightning, that's 1 summon, and this is going to let him not be affected by you're not going to counter activate any card effects during the during his battle phase. He currently has 1, 2, 3, 4 different Skull Servants, so he should be at 4000 attack points. And he attacks the Mathematician, detaching to get 5000, and then summoning Jurighetto, contributing that off to deal another 1000 on top of that, and goes for game. So this is a match, it's a tournament, so we're going to see some siding action, and then we're going to go into game 2. So Prawn Wizard opens up with a very nice hand. He has the Dark Worm, he has Foolish and Reinforcements of the Army to search himself an Armageddon Knight and dump him what he needs. He probably sided into DD Crow because he saw that the Skull Servants in the graveyard are very potent for a Skull Servant deck, obviously. So this is going to allow him to disrupt his opponent's plays on White Princes and weaken King of the Skull Servants whenever they come up. We have a Solemn Warning, which is going to help slow down his opponent when he summons out the king eventually. So what we're going to see Cantru do, he's going to summon White Princess and dump those juicy Skull Servants into the graveyard. He's going to have all 3 different Skull Servants, so he's already set up for his king to come out. Although he'll probably dump a few more before he wants to do that. So we're going to see Prawn Wizard activate Dragon Ravine. He's going to discard a Dark Worm and dump probably Destrudo. Yes, Destrudo. He's then going to activate Reinforcements of the Army to search out Halberd, which is again another 3 special summoned level 4 monster. And then he's going to dump Zephyros, which is going to get him the rank 4 he needs. So he's going to summon Dark Worm and normal summon into Halberd and attack over the White Princess. And then attack for 1800. And search out the Thousand Blades using Assault Halberd's effect. And he's going to overlay into Utopia. Again, he can't go up into the Lightning because he has already summoned twice this turn. He's now hit the summon limit. We're going to see Cantru activate Instant Fusion, and we're going to see a Solemn come out from Prawn Wizard. He knows that Cantru runs the Thousand Eyes Restrict, and he doesn't want that to happen to his Utopia. We're then going to see Cantru use Lila to pop the Dragon Ravine. Again, I feel like this is a very slow play. He might want to make a rank 4 with any Mizuki he mills, but he doesn't mill the Mizuki, so he's just got a sitting duck Lila. I feel like Lila is a bit too slow. you can normal summon her, and she does pop back row, but it wastes a normal summon, so it slows the deck down a hell of a lot. It's a good card, but I think you need to have setup to make the rank 4s work. It is good for milling cards, but again, it does it in the end phase, so if your opponent's playing a very heavy beatdown deck like rank 4, I think it's probably a bit weak. But I may be wrong. I'm not brand new to this format. Maybe it's a great card and it has some synergies somewhere. We see the Mirror Force set. Mirror Force is another great trap in this format. In a turn where in a format where you can only summon 3 times, having your entire field blown out by a Mirror Force is quite devastating. It's quite difficult to rebuild back from, especially if you're going for some big play and you've used up a lot of your resources. Hitting into a Mirror Force is just extremely devastating. We see Kantru summon Raiden and dump the Mizuki, which is what he wanted to see. And then he attacks over the Thousand Blades. Utopia negates, and he baits it out to use the Ghost Ogre on it. So the Utopia is no more. In the main phase 2, he'll banish the Mizuki, summon back the Pyramid Turtle, and Pyramid Turtle gets banished by DD Crow. So unfortunately for Kantru, he does not get to make a level 8 synchro like Beals or a rank 4 play like the Light Sworn Minerva. We're going to see end phase and dump the Goblin Zombie and Charlie Light Brigade, which are not very good mills for him. We'll see Poron draw into the Thunder King Ray or normal summon it. That is going to prevent him from just searching willy-nilly. I don't think that Kantru does search all that often, but he does synchro summon and Exceed summon, so it's a good out to that. We're going to see Prawn Wizard potentially overlay. Yep, we're going to see an Abyss Dweller, which means you can't use graveyard effects next turn. Yeah, so we can't use White Prince to summon out the King of the Skull Servants, which stops that play. Abyss Dweller in this format is very good. Well, it's good against certain matchups. I wouldn't say it's like brilliant, but I think against something like zombies, it's incredibly useful. Zombies aren't too popular though. I think this is the first time I've actually seen a zombie deck being played. I feel like Abyss Dweller was a good pick for this matchup, but I'm not sure if it'll be too relevant in other matchups. He manages to get out the King of the Skull Servants with 4,000 attack points, and he attacks into the Abyss Dweller, taking out a large chunk of Prawn Wizard's life points. Prawn Wizard is left with the Mirror Force on his field, and he doesn't really have any options besides Thousand Blades. Actually, there's a lot of options in his graveyard. He can summon back Zephyros, he can summon back Darkworm if he hadn't summoned this, but he could Zephyros, bounce this back, normal summon into the Thousand Blades, get a rank 4. He's got the Metaverse now as well, which allows him to search out a field spell. I'm not sure if Dragon Ravine is his only field spell and this is dead, or whether he has another one. Maybe Chicken Game or something, because that's legal. So yeah, he's going to do what I say. He bounces back with Thousand Blades, summons out the Zephyros, takes 400, and then he'll probably normal summon this back and make a rank 4. Yeah, he goes into Dark Rebellion Exceed Dragon. Again, he's probably going to... It's a very good card for this matchup because you're going to see King of Skull Servants have a lot of attack points quite often, and so halving the 4,000 to 2,000 and giving it to Dark Rebellion is very powerful. Effectively lets Dark Rebellion attack directly, because if he attacks over the Skull Servant, it's 2,500 damage, which is more than enough for game, and we see that happen. And so Prawn Wizard takes the match with victory, and that was the one of the first games in round 1 of the tournament. This is where I'm going to call my stream tonight. I have work tomorrow. But if you want to see more Trinity Format, please hit the like button. If you want to inform me more about the format, if you know better than me, because obviously I'm brand new to the format, I don't really know too much. Feel free to leave some comments down below if I've said anything stupid in the video, because I'm sure I have. And if you want to see more, subscribe to the channel. I'll try and post more regularly than I have done in the past. I am very excited for this format. It's a lot slower and not as same old as other formats. like the OCG and TCG, where you just summon a negation board turn 1 and watch as your opponent squirms or tries to break through it, and if they break it, they win. If they don't, you win. It's kind of the same game every time, no matter what deck you really play. Whereas in this format, it's a lot more varied. I've managed to make decks like DDD work here, but there are other slower decks that I'm also trying to get to work, which I'm excited about too, because I don't usually get to play slower decks. But yeah, if you want to see more, like, subscribe. If you want to correct me on anything I said in the video or point something out to me that I could improve my DD deck or something, leave it down below in the comments. Thanks for watching. I'll be back probably tomorrow, maybe the day after.